Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Okay, good evening, and welcome to the Bellows Falls Trustees regular meeting at 6 o'clock, Tuesday, November 12th, 2019, and we are in the third floor, on the third floor of the Rockingham Town Hall. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and any additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and/or pressing matters that will require ratification in a future meeting. I do have a couple of things I'd like us to talk about, I'll be brief. One of them is the automated vehicles, because that's coming up in the state of Vermont, is looking for committees that want to test. I want to talk about that, and the final numbers on the community barbecue. Those two items. Since they're brief, could we put them at number 3 and then move the, let's say, buildings down to number 4? It won't take long.
Sure.
Once you pass out, we won't be taking any action necessarily. Okay. So, approve the minutes of the regular meeting, October 8, 2019, and the special meeting, October 29, 2019.
So approve?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, it passed. All right, public comment on items not on the agenda? Hearing none, move on to the manager's report.
So you guys have in front of you updates from Everett over things that have been completed for the last 2 weeks. There's public copies up here. I won't go through that in detail, but just so you guys have it. We have the Vermont Council on Rural Development visit on December 4th. We had our first snowfall last night. The Highway Department spread salt and there were no issues. The Bellows Falls Opera House, the Historical Society fundraiser is going to be Thursday the 14th. And the Rotary's free holiday movie is going to be A Muppet Christmas Carol, and that's December 8th. We have, on November 20th, the rental property owners meeting, and there will be information provided on how to reduce drug activity in rental properties. And then the Compass School is in Westminster's having an autumn market Saturday the 16th from 9:30 to 3:30. We had an incident over the weekend at the Waypoint Center. Chief McGinnis has taken care of the alarm. The building is secure again, and we do have heat up and running in the building. It's a temporary fix, and they're coming next week to fix it.
What was the incident? The heat went out?
We had someone break it.
Okay.
Okay, so it's secured again, like I said, and there's temporary heat on for now. So does that mean the chamber will be back in the building, or are they going to wait until the permanent fix happens?
I'm not sure if she was there this afternoon, but I don't know if that was just temporary. I'll check with her.
Because I know they have upcoming events and things like that, so the stuff they have to get in there for. Okay, thank you. Just wondered.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? On the date of November 20th, about, what was that again?
We have a rental property owners meeting, and we're going to be providing information to property owners and landlords on how to reduce drug activity in their rental properties.
Okay, and what time is it?
Noon.
Noon?
No.
Thank you.
Question, on the 14th, isn't that also when the Opera House is doing that special fundraiser? Is that the same date?
So for the Historical Society fundraiser, that's the 14th.
It's also the same date as, okay, all right, that's the one you're talking about. Okay, great.
The 14th of November.
Yeah,
Correct.
this Thursday.
Thursday.
Okay, that's it?
That's it.
All right. Moving on, we move to the agenda. Number 1, the Fire Department Chief Sean McGinnis with a review of the energy audit and proposal. We have stuff in our packet.
Did you guys get a chance to look at it? I think at this point, I'd just like to know which way you would like to move forward as far as the heating system.
As far as
The heating system.
as far as the heating system? Is that the determination whether we need to put in a chimney or not in the chimney?
Right, so basically, if you've read the report, his recommendation is to go with propane. I know there was some discussion about that when we first brought it up a few months ago.
You can get this, you can have. Yes, we have that. And then proposal.
This is,
Yeah,
this is for installation.
This is an installation proposal. The weatherization, where's the one on the propane? Is it this one?
It's all buried in there.
It's buried in this one page, single page.
Yes. His recommendation about switching over to propane.
First one's on this insulation. Second one is about the attic as well. Third one is the rigid foam to the attic. Fourth one is the cold climate heat pump.
And that deals with dispatch on the police department side.
Right, but there's nothing in here about propane
Really?
on this one. Did you?
It says something about the chimneys failing and need to be replaced. LP offers high efficiency with direct vent option.
Yes, I'm just going to show you the
Yeah,
copy.
there's no numbers.
It's all it said.
Right, no numbers.
There will be no numbers. It was just a matter of, his recommendation was to go with an LP system,
Okay, but no financials.
No
What action
financials.
here to
Oh,
see,
yeah.
right?
which we presented some financials months ago.
Uh-huh.
They were in the area, I had like 24,000, maybe a little bit more to switch the system over. And I know there was some discussion, I believe at least Jigs didn't sound in favor of LP gas. So we decided we would talk about, get a study done, which we did. And this guy favored the switch over to LP gas.
I would like to see the financials, because obviously we have money in our budget and we have like a $30,000 article, okay? None of it was talking about insulation or installing a heat pump for the police department.
Correct.
Okay.
This was an overall of the building.
So you've got a proposal here for about roughly 10,500 or whatever, 10,600, which are things that we
Correct.
didn't even have on the list.
Yes.
And, quite frankly, if we're gonna change the heating system, why would we put a heat pump in the police department? I have no idea.
Because it doesn't solve that problem.
What's that?
Changing the heating system over doesn't solve the problem of having no heat in that area.
In the dispatch
In the
area.
dispatch area of the police department. We'd have to add on.
Oh, well, how do they heat
All
now?
they're doing is changing the boiler from oil to propane.
For
They're not
efficiency.
changing, right, they're not changing any other portion of the heat distribution system at all.
So it doesn't provide.
There's a number of different issues with the building. So the number one is to change over just the boiler. So you would switch the boiler from oil over to LP. And then that addresses some of your efficiency issues. We also needed to address, which I think is addressed in there, the issue of how we heat our water. Right now, we're using the boiler to heat the water, and it's not very efficient. So we're just focusing on that part of it right now, dealing with the chimney, the underground tanks, and the boiler for the building. Then, at some point, we need to figure out what's the best way to deal with, that'll deal with most of the building and the heat. The dispatch area is an entirely different issue. It's been an issue from day one with that building. It's always been cold.
Chief, we just have to come up.
Sure.
Yeah, here we go.
I don't know how well the camera's getting.
I hide back there purposely.
You're hiding on the corner.
Is Wendy still with us?
Yeah, you're still here, aren't you, Wendy? Well, she was a minute ago.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, no, I heard.
Okay,
Really
that's-
hard here, I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. That's okay, yeah, well, and Chief McGinnis was over in the corner, so you probably couldn't hear anything at all.
I heard a little bit. Do you have an overall question? or-
The overall question is, we don't recall the budget for changing, the budget for oil versus
23,000.
propane.
23 to
23,000.
Right,
I remember 23,005 as an initial estimate. I'd like to make the proposal, or I'd like to make the motion that we put out an RFP for that work and see what we get back.
Which work are you talking about, the stuff on this?
No, we already have, this is already an RFP right here, we already have a proposal.
Yeah.
We could put one out. for
But
this.
is it really? Because it's,
Well,
it
then
deals with.
why don't we make the motion to put out an RFP for both the gas, switching over the heating system to gas, and for the weatherization proposal. And we'll see what those numbers come back on multiple bids, and we'll see how that, I mean, we have it in the budget to do this work to improve the weatherization of that building. We know the cost efficiency and the return on investment is going to be about 6 years. I think we did that during, there were some numbers that were talked about over efficiency, and what we were thinking, again, about say, $30,000 is going to break out over about 6.5, 7 years. So I make the motion that we put out an RFP for both the weatherization and the transfer from oil to propane.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion.
Yeah, discussion, yeah. Then there still leaves the issue of the, where you're talking about putting the heat pump. Also the issue of the hot water tank. The issue of the oil tanks in the ground and the demolition of the
Jimmy.
chimney. So I think we need to look at the total picture. We need to look at it with regards to our budget for this year, which is an ambitious budget, but it sounds to me, quick math, is that we're going to be over those numbers.
If you were to go with the entire proposal, yes.
But I think, so the question becomes, Sean, what do we pick? Okay, you know, a boiler, I know nothing about this, but a boiler working at 80% efficiency, I don't know what a brand new boiler operates at. I'm sure it's not 100%,
Right.
but I don't know how bad that is and how urgent that is.
It was going to show about a 13% increase in efficiency.
It was going to show,
Yeah.
okay, up to about 93.
93.
So
93%.
that's where we were getting the math on the savings in oil to propane was going to be about 7 years, 6.5 years to see that return on investment of 30,000. But that also included digging up the oil tanks and replacing it with a buried propane tank in that same location, which I don't think we're going to be able to get to this year.
There's also the issue of the leakage,
Well, we don't know the possibility of it.
No, the water going to the basement.
the idea was that when they pulled the tanks, they were going to fix the
The leak,
the
leakage
leak-
problem.
the leaking problem.
Right. The driving force behind changing the boiler is the chimney. So the chimney needs to come down sooner rather than later.
Either
No matter what,
which
no
way
matter
it
what
would
you
go,
do,
it has to come down.
the chimney has to come down. So that was the driving force behind this. When this guy came in and did the entire building, he said based on the chimney, the fact that the tanks are buried, that he would switch over to LP. That would be the best option to switch over. You know, if the chimney if we had above ground tanks, we had a chimney that was in good shape, we may go a different route. But with everything that needs to be done in the building, his best option was to go with LP.
So if
So
we're
Can I
gonna-
make a suggestion?
We need to
You
get
guys
the
are-
total picture, I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's what your motion is getting at, is to get the picture, and then the RFPs would be for the things that are the top priorities.
Yes. Yeah, to me, the top priority is boiler and dealing with the hot water. And then we can go.
Wendy, did you have some input?
No, I think, from what I can hear, I think what Jake is saying makes a lot of sense to me, that we ought to give you the whole picture, not just a piece of the picture, because, I think one RFP isn't going to, solve all of the
Problems, yeah.
There's different vendors needed for different things, so
Right.
why don't we come back to you with a complete plan, but in the meantime, let the chief know if you have concerns about any of the items, like the air source heat pump. I don't know if there's concerns.
Well-
I generally hear really good things about them. They conserve energy.
Oh, yeah, they
work
do.
on electricity. But see if there's anything that Sean wants direction on specifically now, and then we can come back to you at a future meeting with RFPs, maybe multiple RFPs.
So is there any such thing?
No, I just wanted to know whether to proceed with the LP, because I will, I've already talked to
Yeah.
a couple of different places, and I have fine in mind, and I'll do that.
Because of course, we still have the leaking, the drainage issue,
Mhm.
and the dispatch area is not getting any warmer.
No,
At
but
the
that's,
Like if you're
time.
gonna-
that's a bigger issue.
Yeah,
If part of the, installing the gas furnace is the gas tank, and the tank is gonna go where the oil tanks are, then it would seem to me that part and parcel of that plan would be to fix the leak.
Absolutely.
So,
but the gas tank would be above ground, and the oil tanks are below ground, is that
oh, I
correct?
thought I heard
No, we would,
some-
no, we would, if we're gonna go with LP, that would go
It's
with,
gonna be very,
It would be, okay.
it would be bigger.
Oh, okay, all right, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, so that would be it, just getting us the full picture so we can understand financially where we are. And that would be for our next meeting.
And I, for one, am certainly willing to spend what we budgeted.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not trying to,
no, I agree.
whatever, but
Are you willing to drop your?
yeah, I'll hold the motion.
Are you going, you're okay with the second?
Yeah.
You dropped as well, okay. All right. All right then, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like we know where we are. A lot of information. Get some? Next, number 2 is the finance office, is Shannon Bravila, and overtime and compensatory reports.
So the police are still running basically the same amount of overtime and earned comp. It's right where we anticipate without 2 more full-time officers. And then the utility departments did have some overtime and earned comp as a result of the sewer line break the weekend before last. We actually saved quite a bit of money because a lot of the utility employees, as well as highway, actually had sick time in that payroll, so not a lot of them earned overtime. Not as many earned overtime as they could have.
I guess I have some concerns that our report used to tell us the kind of things that they were getting overtime for.
Yeah, that page is.
That no longer exists.
Well,
So
we
we have no detail, we just know, hey, it's overtime, or hey, it's comp
Oh,
time.
the police
Doesn't say
isn't
why.
in, I do have the police for you, I'm not sure.
So we used to get it for all the, we used to detail whether it was for a break or whether
Well,
it
we-
was testing.
We had talked about how long that takes to put together and whether it was worth it. I can go back to doing that, but we agreed on the summary.
I don't know, I guess it's because the same
I would
personnel.
like to see the other paper involved in this.
Okay.
So that,
from my standpoint, the police one.
yeah, and that's always
Yeah, that's-
provided, and I can go
Yeah.
back to, but like I said, it, depending on what for me to detail all of it for you is between 2 and 4 hours. This summary, for me to do these reports is about 30 minutes, so
Mhm.
that's depending where you want me to spend my time.
Now, the combination of comp and the overtime, those numbers, I mean, obviously overtime, we know the numbers because you paid it out in salary. But the comp time, it goes into a bank. Do we expense the amount of the comp time? Is that in the financials?
No, that's.
It's not
when they
expensive
use
to
That's
the
it.
a
use it.
liability.
Yes, it becomes a liability on our
Yeah.
balance sheet, but it's not expensed in the
Until
profit
they use
and
it,
loss.
and then it's in their regular pay. Right line, yes. Okay.
You know,
Doesn't show up till then.
So, I mean, when we look at our financials, we're racking up this comp time and we just don't have any.
It doesn't really work like that. We carry comp time all year. People earn it all year. If they took it this week or banked it and then took it another week, this actually having the earned comp, they can only have 80 hours.
So many
in a bank.
hours. rolled over to the next year, right?
Right, and they can
Maximum.
only have 40 hours rolled over to next year, they can only have 80 in their bank, so they're,
Okay.
and all in all, it's almost a wash. Yes, in July, if there's pay increases, they get paid out, they potentially could get paid out for 40 hours at a different
Yeah,
rate.
higher rate, yeah.
But this actually brings our salary more even across the board, because if highway used all of their time as overtime and didn't save any for the summer, it wouldn't be as flat. So for budgeting purposes, this is actually better.
I don't know, Gary, if you want more detail, but I don't know that that's the consensus of the board at this point.
Well, I'm just looking for the other sheet that we usually get, like on.
That's the one on the police.
Like the police,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and I'll email that all to you after this. I'm not, that was just an
Just not done.
oversight. Yeah, well, no, it's done, actually.
Oh, it's done, just not emailed,
Yeah,
okay, or provided.
yeah.
Okay, so does that satisfy you?
Yeah, no, yeah,
That's
that's,
fine, okay.
exactly.
All right, anything else on overtime compensatory reports? Year-to-date financials. I had a significant number of questions, I sent them all to Shannon already. I mean, it was like, what, like 20 questions? Yeah. And one of them was wrong, and I apologize for that. But,
Where do you want to start?
at the beginning, if you, if you have some questions, go ahead and.
Well, I had a question on the covering memo.
Yep,
It mentions that the septic revenue is running ahead of budget, which is a good thing, that's income. The flip side of that is that the sludge removal is also increasing, and that's a cost. My question to you is that a good trade?
so,
Trading, in other words, getting more septic and having to send,
so at least we have the revenue to offset it. The expense is high, and we really have no control over that. We have no control over how much we take in. So at least we have offsetting revenue when the expense increases. But if you're asking me, is it an even trade? No.
so in other words, the having to go to a truck a week on the
Septic.
not septic,
Sludge.
the sludge,
Yeah, great.
is more expensive than getting the extra revenue.
Correct.
But it's not just a function of septic, it's a function of the throughput of the regular effluent.
Yeah, and like I said, we have no control over that.
Well, we could put up a sign that
Outgrow
says,
the whole
full today,
Through the whole system.
Not taking
I heard that
anymore.
not taking it anymore, turn them away at the gate.
We could do that. I'll bring it
I'm
up
just-
with Rob.
I mean, I would just say before we move on to another subject, that there are some communities in the United States that have found other uses with grit and sludge. They're getting creative
And
about
so-
it, to make it a revenue source as opposed to an expense. It would be great if we could find some way to do the
So
same,
Rob
something the same.
has actually talked about that, and he would need a piece of equipment that would give him the ability to, instead of us sending the sludge
Right.
out, to take care of it.
Okay,
So, but it's a very expensive piece of equipment.
yeah. I don't know how expensive that is, but it's probably something like well over 100,000 or so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the ROI on that
I know,
Yes,
would
and
be
so,
2
yes.
years.
yep.
So
and
that
Rob
would be a
is
good
actually
idea,
working
actually.
to provide you figures.
And whether or not there are any, I don't know if there's any type of grant or funding available for that sort of thing. It does bring us into the future, the 21st century, reuse, reduce, recycle, the whole point of that. So like using gray water for using on your lawn and stuff like that, instead of sending it into the system with all the black water. But it is something
But
to
it would
consider for the
certainly be
future.
worthwhile to look at the analysis.
Yes,
Right.
certainly would, yeah, when you get some paperwork ready, it would be great. Okay, other questions on the budget?
I have a few. The first one, I know that we got the balance sheet for the capital and equipment fund. We still show a balance here. I thought we were going to use that for the purchase of the last police vehicle.
We did not use everything that we budgeted. That the purchase of the police vehicle came in under budget.
No, I know that, but I thought we were going to use we're sitting here with this, what, $2,500 in our equipment reserve. And the question is, why don't we spend it? Why don't we offset, you know,
Use it on something.
Okay.
so that was
The
the
next
question.
equipment purchase.
Purchase,
Okay.
okay. I had a couple of questions on the general fund expenses. On page 3 of 16, the IT outside support,
Yeah, I had that too.
this of course caught us by surprise last year when we were kind of coerced into changing vendors and going with that contract. But we certainly, when we set the budget at 21,000, we thought that was definitely going to cover us for the year.
So I still do anticipate that we will come in between the IT and the software purchases. I still do anticipate we will be okay. And the computer hardware. So I think part of this, a function of this, is that some of the IT support invoices should have gone into computer hardware. So, well, I can make the adjustments, the reclass entries.
Okay, because I mean, obviously, we want to be able to monitor that contract. That we're not paying over what we're supposed to pay. I don't think, do we buy software from that firm too?
Well, we have monthly amounts that we pay for software that we have.
So we recently bought a computer, didn't we?
We have been having to change over a lot of our computers into thin clients, which is much cheaper. A thin client, if they're on sale, sometimes we get them for $30 or $50 depending, and that replaces the whole computer because we work off of our servers. A lot of the computers that we have are so old that the Windows on them is actually expiring. So it would cost so much more than the $30 or $50 we're paying for each thin client to upgrade these old computers. So, and the thin clients are actually finding are lasting years longer than the computers. So this is a good, because we already have the server and the functionality for it, it's a really good move for us.
But that's not going into computer hardware?
So I just need to pull all of the
Okay.
invoices.
You're saying
So-
that's in the IT, outside IT support?
yeah,
that
so
needs to be
once
reclassified to
It's
go
in there, okay.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
On that line, when
Yeah.
you said you had just received a 3-month bill, does that mean we only have 6 months more to pay?
For the phone and internet?
No, for the
Oh.
IT support.
Oh, so, no.
Because you said you just received a 3-month bill when I asked the question.
Yeah, so we had just put in 3 months worth of billing.
Right.
And there was hardware on those bills.
Okay. Okay. That was it, that was my.
Okay, all right. Then on page 5 of 16, the unsafe building,
Oh, yeah.
we had like a $90 expense up until this month.
So this is all legal fees that we have as a result of obtaining information, what we can do, Wendy and I had discussed it, and we opened this account, so it was easy to track to keep updating the lien that we have on the property, so if anything ever happened, we can move this, we can either keep track of it like this and then move it as one reclass entry at the end of the year back in the legal. This is just so we don't have to keep digging through to make
So
sure. We have-
now the engineer's cost, is that in this number?
No,
So
This
where are
is-
you putting that?
I don't know, is that we've received a bill, I have not seen an invoice for it yet.
Well, we've had 2 engineering reports. One from last 2018, which that would have been the last fiscal
Last
year,
year,
sorry.
yeah.
And so, yes, so that's great. We've been waiting for the new one.
Right.
And you may not have been billed yet. I don't remember seeing it when I did the warrants
But
last.
the 1,800 is all legal fees?
Yeah,
It's all legal fees, because I thought they should go illegal.
and
I
we
didn't anticipate that they would wind up
Well, I
on this
think
line.
and we
showing
can move it all, like I said, we can either move it now if you'd like.
I think keeping it so that we can see it for a while.
I guess so, but when you
Makes sense.
wanted to look at what legal fees were.
Yeah,
remember you mentioned it
we're
earlier.
we're right on budget with
Yeah,
legal fees,
yeah,
so.
okay, so, all right.
uh,
But as long as we understand that's what
What
it
it
is.
is, yeah. I can actually
And
see
so,
the title to add, like,
Yeah, that's what it is, yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
um,
If
just-
anyone else has
on
some
the-
questions. That's why I'm trying to get mine out of the way.
I had
no,
a
I
question,
really appreciate that.
a question on page 14.
On safety,
This is under the wastewater and
yep.
the sewer line expense of 13,873. Is that part of the,
The
Breaks?
sewer line break, yeah.
That's what that was.
now, was this, what does this cover? Does this cover both? There was 2 sewer line breaks, right? One was on School Street or School Atkinson, and one up here
So this
Oh, yeah.
is the bills that we've received to date for both.
for both.
But I anticipate that we have about another $10,000 coming. Because the main sewer line that broke was pretty expensive,
Mhm.
because it happened on a weekend and.
Okay, thank you.
On that same page, the uniforms and safety was where I asked, because it's over budget. And you said it won't go over budget, but it's already over budget.
Well, I meant, we're done.
We're done spending. Okay.
Yeah, so,
But the one, I'm sorry, I do have one more, which is on page 15 of 16. And that's the maintenance to the sewer building, where it's 72% of our budget, our brand-new sewer
so
plant.
Rob will not go over budget, he knows what he had, and he's aware of where he's at. He just has done what he needed to do at the beginning of the year, but he is very diligent about that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have a question, Jen.
Go ahead. Gary.
Page 5 of 16, under the fire officer expense, the new equipment, where did the additional $500 get put in there from? We had budgeted 15,000. Now the actual is 15,500.
So where did you find the 15,000?
That was
The number.
put in when we,
I'm so sorry, could you just, which number?
He's looking at
The
4,395.
Under fire
$0.00.
office
under new
expenses.
equipment,
It's the last one.
last year we had budgeted, we put $15,000 in there. Where did the extra 500 come from?
This is what was passed at town.
You'd have to go back to the original budget. I didn't bring mine with me to see what the budget, you can check it there in the booklet, which has the actual items online.
You want the village report?
You have their village report?
Yeah.
Wait. So it would be under the general fund fire equipment new report. There we go, okay. So. Just taking this in, okay? Fire. New equipment, 15,500.
Okay, I'm on my mistake. Yeah, no,
See on
my
the
mistake.
bottom? Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, John. Oh, I don't have the book, remember, because I don't like carrying that,
Oh,
that thing around.
yes, that's
Do you have any
right.
questions, Stephanie?
We're good.
My only concern was, if you guys looked at the phone bills, you've heard Gaetano on this town side complain about that, but they're outrageous.
Yeah, so we're going to transfer over, and Wendy and I are doing everything that we can to maintain the budget, and we are moving telephone systems basically to be able to do that.
Mhm.
So that's already in the works. But we will be doing RFPs for that, and then bringing them to the board.
Do, a question, since I have never asked it before, do company phones, municipal phones, have access to internet data downloads, all that kind of stuff, the
Well,
same thing that everyone,
it's unlimited.
streaming, all the things that we
It's
have?
unlimited. Municipalities are eligible for unlimited plans at the cost of, so all of the phones have
Okay,
unlimited
that's what I
data.
wondered. All right.
Yeah, we don't ever have an overage on a bill or anything like that.
Thank you. Anyone else? We all set? Looks like we're set. Okay, so now that I've totally lost all my paperwork.
Your two little items.
My two little items are next, yes. One of those is the automated vehicle item, and I have flyers here somewhere. Yep, there they are. I'm gonna pass one down to John. And 1, 2, 3, 4 people. These, you know these, Wendy, these are the automated vehicle testing stuff that we got at Municipal Day?
Right.
Okay, so.
Right, I'm generally aware of the.
Right, they were asked, so these are the guides that talks about them, and I just wanted us to look at them and maybe consider putting it on the agenda for next meeting. They are looking for communities. They haven't got, as far as I know, as of that meeting, they didn't have any community that was interested in allowing them to come with automated vehicles to test in Vermont. To see if the sensors work appropriately, if breakdown lanes don't stop them, if they don't go into a gutter, you know, those kinds of things. And I thought maybe it's something that Bellows Falls would be interested in doing. So that was why I brought it forward. So, you know, and no one's had a chance to read it, so just that's a piece of information for us to go. And the other one was the final numbers on our community barbecue. So I kept track of all the receipts. I don't know if you care. There's one for you, one for John, a couple more down here, and is there one left over? There should be one left over for the person recording the meeting. So we received, John, Jiggs, and I all donated $100, and a citizen at the community barbecue donated $10, bringing our total expense money to $310. I have all the receipts here if anybody wants to see them, and we spent $217.80, leaving us with $92.23. And I want our board to consider, which we can simply do at our next meeting, but what you want us to do, what the board would like to do with the $92.23. So that you might want time, you might want to donate it somewhere, you might want to throw it into our expense fund.
Well, if you're gonna do it again next year. Sure.
We're gonna do it again next year.
That's
Roll it.
Roll it. Okay, so how do you want to save it to roll it? Do you want me to hold it? I might not even be office next year. Think about it. It's possible.
We don't want to create another account, so.
Fine, I'll hold
we'll
it.
trust you.
I'll hold it. So it's $92.23. I will be accountable.
Write that down, Shannon.
I gave him a copy. He read it.
$67 cake.
Oh, but yes, you donated the cake, and other people in the community donated. Yes, and that was a great cake, and it all disappeared, which was terrific. So no fat firefighters were the result of your leftover cake. So very important. All right, thank you for letting me have those items. Moving on to the next one, number 4 would be the unsafe building, 66 Atkinson Street. We have A, ratify and confirm decisions made at the October 29th, 2019 joint board meeting to authorize staff to initiate legal action to enforce order on 66 Atkinson. We need to repeat the motion and agree again.
And I do have Ray coming, in case you had any questions or wanted to speak to him.
Right, and that's fine as well. But now I have to find the motion. It's probably on here. So if anyone would like to make that motion, so then we can discuss.
This is the motion right here. I move to ratify and confirm the decision made at the October 29th, 2019 joint board meeting to authorize staff to initiate legal action to enforce the order on 66 Atkinson Street.
Need a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay. All right, discussion.
There he is.
There he is.
Can I get an update on the project?
I'm sorry?
May I get an update?
Certainly, we do have, the trustees did receive a letter of information concerning that came to us individually on drawings.
I just want to say,
Yes.
so everybody else can hear what we've got going on. My name is Elijah Zimmer. I live on Church Street and School Street at the intersection, and I've recently become involved with the project. Going forward, I've volunteered to be the project coordinator, and over the past month, we've made a lot of progress, I feel. We're taking an entirely different approach. We have started to form a nonprofit organization to take over the building and the restoration, getting community involvement, reaching out to the community. I've had a really good response, very positive, and we received a small grant from the Preservation Trust of Vermont to get a building assessment done by a qualified historic preservation expert, telling us what needs to be done with the building. And we're applying for a $75,000 grant through the Preservation Trust to begin that work. It's a great opportunity, and this project is really about bringing the community together to save what is important to us. So it's, from everything that I've heard, you know, from people around the community, people in the meetings, people really want this building to stay around, and it's something that's served us well for many years, and it's an important, it can be a very important space for our community. It's a large open space that we don't have right now, something that's available to the entire community for events, and it's also just a really important part of our historic neighborhood. So I encourage anybody who's interested in getting involved to let us know and see what we can bring together. So thanks.
Ray, would you do me a favor and get that piece of slate off of that table in back of you? Right there. Thank you. All right, discussion by the board members. Does anybody have anything to say?
Well, I'm interested in this young man's comments. Unfortunately, we've had a revised engineer's report, the follow-up to the 2018 report that was done just a couple of weeks ago. It's in our package. It's available for a public look. The building has deteriorated further. The significant question right now is it's not safe to even have workmen go in there. The estimates that we've heard talked about from Chris are naive in terms of the cost of what it costs things to do. A potential grant of $75,000 wouldn't do a lick to fix this building, much less renovate. We're talking about a building that's literally falling down. If it's unsafe for workmen to go in there, you can just imagine what the cost would be to allow workers to go in there. I mean, it would be a significant cost to stabilize a building that's in that much of a deterioration. So I think unfortunately the initiative or the enthusiasm that you're bringing to it, which is great, is too little and too late. And we have to deal with the public safety issue here. And I think to stabilize, not renovate, not get an architect that's into renovating, trying to restore what this building looked like back in 1850. We're talking about a building that's falling down, and the need to, if it stays up, what it needs to just to keep it from falling down is probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. I just don't see the public ability to come up with that kind of money. I don't see the willingness to contribute materials or anything like that. I think this, unfortunately, not just Chris's tutorship, because he bought it for $1. Clearly, this damage was well underway long before Chris ever got the building. And I think we have to be concerned about the safety. And we need to do something about it. I think the motion is very appropriate. I think we need to move.
I'd just like to point out
I'm
that-
sorry, one moment. I asked the board for input, so I wanted to see if any other trustees, I'll give you a moment. John, did you have anything?
Directly or indirectly, where are we at on this? Are we talking just about the motion to, or are we going?
We have the motion, but we have the ability to stall the motion, if that's what we chose
I know, but
to do.
how in depth do we want to get into the discussion of the building? Is it just, are we discussing just about the motion and whether we want?
At the moment,
Or do
A
we
is
wanna-
about that,
Okay.
and then we have a B action on it, so there's other actions, which is one, we could talk about more stuff at that point. Stefan?
Read the update that was received here, references new proposals or drawings, reference to repair.
Right. Gary? Jim?
I'm kind of with James on this. We've given enough time. And public safety is our number one concern.
And that's why the gates are still there and the abutments are still there. And I asked Ray, because I forgot to bring this piece in. This piece of slate is actually larger than the pieces of slate from my home, which was built in 1838, that I lost in fire. This slate is actually larger in its full size, and you can see it's got good integrity, but a chunk of it has fallen off. I do not want to pit this against a human being. I don't want that to happen. I go by the building every day, and I am sad about the condition that it is in, and I wish that the previous owners had taken action, and I wish that it had come to our attention sooner, that we could have taken action to someone who had deeper pockets than Mr. Glenn. I would have wished that today you came in and said, hoo-hoo, somebody just gave us a huge donation of da-da-da-da to fix this building immediately. Because every day now, it's raining, it's snowing. The integrity of the building is getting worse, slowly but surely, as I stare at the hole every time I drive by up to the stop sign. This is what we are worried about. Initially, the exterior and safety of our public, our children, in that schoolyard just beyond, and coming up across the street. We had to bar them from access to that street, which has always been a problem on that sidewalk for years because the snow is constantly falling down into the sidewalk. But now we have this problem. This was retrieved from the property, I believe by you, Chuck. And I just wanted to bring the gravity of what's actually going on here to this meeting when we are sad but serious about protecting the public. And I appreciate the update that you have made, but at the same time, as Mr. McAuliffe has already stated, it appears to be too little, too late to protect the public. If tomorrow morning somebody came in and they took care of the entire protection on the outside and got on the inside, that might be something that we might say, okay, we can hold off, but we're not there, and you're not there. You're talking about another assessment done historically. That's where you are with it. You don't have money to put to repair now. And that is why it's a very serious subject for us and why we didn't want to go this far. That's why we dragged our feet for over a year. So, unless if you wanted to say something else, please, you may, because I think the board has had their say.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think that people in this community are no stranger to adversity, and we've definitely taken on some really tough things and made them work. And this is no exception. There's no question that the building definitely needs work, but whether it's an insurmountable problem or not is something that can be determined by a qualified expert in the matter. And I feel confident that as a community, we can rally together to save this place and to save, what is such an important part of our community.
It's still on the tax sale list as far as we know, yes. Does anyone else have something to say about the building before we move on the motion?
I'd like to say something.
Yes, Chris.
All right. I've had what I consider to be the best that I know in the field, including Chris Parker from Brattleboro, who I trust explicitly. Chris's final analysis, when he walked in, he took Todd's report, folded it up and threw it out and said it's an opinion. Chris Parker, and I don't want to be quoted on that statement, but I will say, Chris's final statement to me is the building is totally salvageable, which I believe. That's why I'm still involved in it. Right? Now, on Monday, we have Jenna from Preservation Trust coming down, and she has not been in the building. We have Jamie Dugan, Historic Preservation, coming down. Hopefully it'll be this week. No one has been in the building, so it's very difficult to make an assessment just looking at the outside. My project is I'm starting the inside out. I'm not doing the outside in. Because the problem is not in slate, the problem is in the trusses. And that's what we're addressing right now. So that's where I stand right now.
If over the years, every building in this town that ever had a problem had been torn down, we wouldn't have any historic buildings left now.
And that's the way we're going.
Did you just say that the engineering report that we received both a year ago and just in the past 2 weeks is not substantive, has no
It's an opinion.
no integrity?
It's an opinion.
It's more than an opinion.
It's an opinion.
This is a professional engineer.
It's still a professional
Well,
opinion.
okay.
Is Chris-
And we have done
But
that.
I'm going to deal with people who are actually in the field, not textbook learning. And that's who I deal with.
Chris, the engineer has, and we have in our order that nobody is to go into that building. It's not safe.
Well, I come in almost every day.
Okay, and we hear about, we get calls about the yard sales that you're conducting.
And
There
most
on
of
a
those
weekly
are outside. There's nothing inside the building.
All right.
Now, look, I've taken Todd's report, and I go over it, and I go over it, and I address it personally, and saying like, okay, I agree with this, I agree with that, all right? And I'm taking the steps along with the findings I'm getting, and saying like, okay, so we put this two together. The last package I gave you showed a structural, let's call it a membrane, of the building. The problem started as soon as they jacked the building up, which would have been probably, 1898. That's when the problem started. Now we're trying to correct that. And it's slow, it's tedious, it's dangerous.
I want to clear something up.
That's
Is
right.
Chris Parker an engineer, a structural engineer? He's an architect, isn't that correct?
No, he's a professional restorer. He deals.
But he's not an engineer.
Construction.
All right.
He has tremendous experience in dealing with these structures, much more
How
so
long have you owned the building, Chris?
engineers.
A little over 2 years.
Yeah, nothing's happened.
Well,
Okay,
you
you've
know,
defied our orders.
I keep hearing that where nothing's happening.
We've
Point of
got
order.
several $1,000s of
Let me finish
expenses that you're liable for that you haven't paid. So
Right.
your credibility, Chris, is
Wait,
very-
point of order. Please let him finish talking,
your
then
credibility
respond.
is a serious issue here, okay?
You know. Chris, do you want to respond to that?
No,
Okay.
no. It's not worth my time to respond to it.
Anything further? Hearing nothing, we need to repeat the motion now at this point. We're ratifying the motion made at our last meeting. Did you take it down? Do you have it? Just, could you repeat it, please? Just to make sure we've gotten so far afield here.
So, Chase did the motion that was on the agenda to ratify and confirm decisions made at the October 29th, 2019 joint board meeting to authorize staff and initiate legal action to enforce the order on 66 Atkinson Street.
It was seconded by
And
John.
then it was seconded by John
Okay,
for the discussion.
thank you. Hearing nothing further. All those in favor of the motion, though sadly, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Can I make a comment on this? Quick.
On the motion?
No, on what's going on in the future.
Okay, well, the next, we're gonna go into other
other
actions
actions. Okay,
next.
that's
We're
fine.
going to other actions, and And we are asked to consider an asbestos inspection because if the building came down, it could be all friable without that. That was referenced by Chuck. You're recommending that we get that done, yes?
I made the recommendation. We've had some experience with demolition and the costs go up significantly if one or two things happen. The structure falls down and we're not able to ascertain when it's in that down state what is asbestos, what is not. And then there's a determination by the Department of Health that says, okay, we need to have people watching that waste stream, watching the dumpsters get filled. So that's an added expense. The other possibility, which we don't want to think about, but if there ever is a fire or anything like that, it's the same kind of determination. To go in there with the asbestos inspection, it's $500 to $1,000. I'll probably try to handle it under my health budget. It's a relatively low cost affair, and it is a requirement of the state of Vermont to have this level of inspection. The hope is that the determination proves that there's no asbestos there. I do think there's asbestos, but I want to, we just want to find out.
So are we authorized to go in there?
In proceeding with this demolition order, this could be an action that you guys take in preparation for it.
Do we need a court order though?
I would defer to council.
I'll take that up in executive session.
Okay. And so are you saying we should move on it? Is that what you're saying? Or should we?
Oh, on the.
If you want to talk about it in executive session, should we move on the item?
No, we should talk about it first.
Should talk about it first.
Talk about it first.
I don't think there's any question that what you've recommended is appropriate, so I think.
Yeah, I think we have a question about that.
But I think that the timing is, I think we have to get a little clarity on the timing when we can do things.
I agree. I'm just glad to pop up on your radar now. There is a seasonality to this work. This is a good time of year, and none of us want to be in that structure if there's snow on the roof, for obvious reasons.
Well, I was going to say, the safety issues are present right now, so I don't know how that would affect how they would do the inspection.
I've already consulted with a few people. Different strategies will be employed, but these folks are not strangers to buildings in this condition.
We could come out of executive session and make that motion and take care of it.
We could, yeah.
But we would have to ratify the next meeting, of course. And I hate doing those.
Yeah.
So
I do hate doing those, but,
you want to go into an executive session now then?
we only have one more item left on the agenda, so we should probably get through it.
You want to make a motion subject to?
Yes, we could do that. Okay, so that'll be a
Well,
motion
we've got
subject
plenty of
to.
time, we'll be
Yeah.
up in 4 weeks.
You
Well-
want to wait till December to move forward on asbestos?
You can come out of the executive session tonight and still do the decision.
You can.
You just on the agenda.
It's on the
It's on
agenda.
the
We
agenda.
defer it till
Okay.
after the executive session. We could do that if we choose to. So
Okay.
that may happen after the executive session. It is on the agenda already, so we would not have to ratify it. Okay.
Okay.
Any other actions? You had something else you wanted to say, John?
Well, I just wanted to say, at this point, this is not the end of what's going on. This is allowing us to be able to move forward on a very lengthy process that we need to do. So, I do hope that there can be a resolution to this building that does not involve it being torn down. The issue I think that we have here is that we have no timeline. We have no gauge, Chris, by the way, this is a really good outline of what needs to be done, but there's no timeline associated with this. This may take years, and at which point these actions are moot at that. So please continue to push forward on this. But you have to understand, we also have to push forward on the public safety aspect of what we're doing.
I totally understand.
And no matter what's wrong on the inside, unfortunately, the outer effect is what we're having to see. So the concern for public is critical to us. So we are doing only what we can, and it will still take some time. All right, thank you for coming. Moving on to the agenda, we are discussing the village nuisance ordinance. Move this out of here. Put it back. All right, so have you had a chance to read the ordinance? Gentlemen? Okay, this, as you can see here, Wendy's still here? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. We hadn't checked in with you for a while. So the ordinance was initially presented to the select board. They had their first reading last week. Now it is before us to consider the ordinance being separated for Bellows Falls Village Corporation, as opposed to having it run simply by the town of Rockingham, and that was the consideration. So we're here for a discussion on that.
Can I ask, are there copies of that for the public?
Is there any there? Thank you.
Would you provide a little clarification?
Yes.
The select board has reviewed this document
Right,
as a town document.
as the town of Rockingham document.
Okay, and then we're looking at it as a Village of Bellows Falls document. Now, we're part of Rockingham. Why don't we just adopt their,
Well, we wouldn't adopt theirs at all.
Okay.
We would be subject to it.
we'd just be subject to it?
Right. If we don't choose to do this separately. My consideration was concern of private property and us not understanding our village perhaps better. So that was the thinking. If this board does not agree with that, the select board will go into their second reading at their next meeting, which will be next week. And if they pass it as it is, there will be a 60-day period for people to comment on it and before it goes into effect. Yes.
My only concern would be the
Wait a second.
financial implication to the village, because then you'd be responsible for, that would be my only reason to recommend that you allow the town to oversee this ordinance, because they have the funds to enforce it. Because once you adopt it, then you in turn have to pay to enforce it.
Understand. Wendy?
Yeah, is Ray there?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Ray, if I can speak, please correct me. The way the ordinance that's in front of the trustees is written, it would not replace the town ordinance. It would just provide an additional level of protection for the village to enforce basically the same thing. It's similar to the village's current
Ordinances, right.
Obviously, but it has much more enforcement capabilities and it covers more situations. But the town ordinance, as adopted on first reading, does include the village in the enforcement procedures of the town ordinance. If the town is enforcing against a property that is within either one of the villages, then that village's board advises the select board on appropriate enforcement. But this ordinance does not, would not necessarily change the town, or would not change the town ordinance. The trustees could request that the town change its ordinance, but just adopting this ordinance does nothing to the town ordinance, is my understanding. So, attorney, please chime in.
He's thinking.
My partner Josh has been the one that's been working on this, but we did have a discussion on it today. Shannon mentioned the financial aspect of it. The burden of enforcement would fall 100% on the village. Right now, as Wendy says, we are rolled in or folded into the town ordinance. We're part of the town of Rockingham. If the town chooses to leave the village in, assuming the village didn't try to adopt their own, no, assuming the village does try to adopt their own, you then have two authorities with jurisdiction over enforcement in the village. If one entity chooses not to enforce, the other one does, from a legal defense standpoint, I could see that being a major problem to be raised. If they both choose to enforce for whatever reason, or for different reasons, and the enforcement is inconsistent with each other, you have a problem. I don't know if you would have a joint enforcement officer, so they both, either that or going to employ a separate employee for the village.
Well, Sean is an assistant health officer right now.
health officer.
Also.
Yeah. I don't set policy, but I think the village adopting a separate ordinance is more trouble than it's worth.
I would just like to point out, to be sure,
Yeah.
we already have 2 ordinances that cover the majority of these things. One of them being the unsafe building ordinance, and number 2, obstructions against persons and property, already in force. So what will the village do with those 2 ordinances, those 2 chapters, if the town has control over nuisances, blighted, unsound, or abandoned properties?
I think we would have to re-review them.
But should
But I think
we relinquish?
Well, I think that, you know, my feeling sitting on the board is I'm looking out for the best interest of the taxpayers of the village of Bellows Falls. And I think that any actions that we take should A, save money or spend the least amount of money that's necessary to get the job done. And number 2, look at quality of life. And if quality of life issue becomes important with regards to financials, then we spend the money to assure quality of life. Here, we're a little community. We've got the initiative taken by the town to draft this ordinance, cover the villages. I think the whole enforcement, et cetera, is provided for us as taxpayers of the town of Rockingham. I think the wise decision is to just not complicate things and create more confusion. And plus, there's a potential that it would cost our taxpayers, the village taxpayers, additional costs in addition to picking up their full share of what the town cost is. So to me, it's a real easy decision. I think it does beg the question of making sure that adopting this or having the town adopt this doesn't conflict with some of our other ordinances, and make sure that we don't create, you know, some of the potential confusion that could be created. But I mean,
Say, for instance, right now, we are currently, a previous item was concerning the unsafe building ordinance, which we already have in effect.
yeah, but I'd much rather have the town on our side. I mean, obviously Chuck is here.
She's calling.
She's calling back in.
In his capacity.
Hello?
And
Hi, sorry.
is helping us.
Okay.
Helping us with this issue. So, you know, I think it's great. We're paying our share. Let's get our share. So,
Anyone else have anything else to say about this? So do we wish to, or do we not wish to adopt the ordinance separately from the town of Rockingham?
I'm not in favor of it this time.
I'm not in favor of it.
I'm not.
Well, I don't like giving up any authority from this board, so I also, in this particular case, or specific case, did not want to mimic what the town of Rockingham is doing, because we are working jointly, good relations between the town and the village. The gentlemen that have been involved and the ladies involved have been diligent of the goal, with a common goal. And I see no sense in increasing the expenses.
Okay, well,
I mean-
what about our current ordinances? Do you want to relinquish them? And I just want, as a person who believes that as we are a municipality, separate from the town of Rockingham as a municipality, I concern myself with the loss of our rights, and I mean, as a village that can control itself. That's the whole point of being a municipality, have certain control of yourself.
Well, I think, Madam President, that's warrants another discussion, but I think what we have currently with our unsafe buildings has been a catalyst, which has been a good mechanism and a tool which has involved the town to make the efforts to accomplish the goals that we're seeking, and some of what we've talked about tonight. So I think, you know, it would warrant a good discussion in the future, but with this specific
Let's see what happens.
item, right?
See what happens with the town.
Sure.
Okay, so shall I just tear this up right now?
No, let's see what happens with the town.
You're fortunate at this time in history to have some village people who are on the town board and who hear you
Mhm.
and hear this board, so.
the eating away of village concerns brings us closer to merger.
I don't see it. I think,
Of course you don't, Jason.
No,
I know,
no.
and I understand the financial issue. But if the village handles the problem, then the town doesn't handle the problem. Therefore, the taxpayers aren't
We don't have
getting
the
two
funding
bites.
to handle the problem.
we don't have the funding.
We don't have the funding,
No.
so.
We're an organization that has basically 4 areas of responsibility. Water, sewer.
Excuse me a second. Yes, Wendy?
Sorry, just figure out that.
Okay.
Water, sewer, police, and fire. And I think that I've been pleased that Public Works, our sidewalks and streets and, all of that kind of stuff, plowing, maintenance, and all that stuff is done on a coordinated basis. And I think that the issue is not giving up our charter. It's basically looking for ways to work with the town that will accomplish the goal at the lowest cost to our residents. So I just...
Deb, if it makes you feel any better, I don't think, and I'm singling you out and all the others.
No, I won't belabor the point anymore. I'm just really rabid about protecting the rights of the village, and everybody knows that.
Right, no, I appreciate that as a village resident, but I don't foresee in the near future a merger discussion or a merger vote coming up anywhere. Probably another 15 years.
No way.
Okay, then we can move on. Let's see, we have the fire department and police call logs,
I'm sure in your
Excuse
package.
me.
which were in our packet. I'm sorry, yes.
I had a question about what was on this ordinance. Could I speak for a second?
Oh, certainly. Did you get a chance to look at it?
Yeah, I got a chance to look
Okay,
at it.
I'm sorry I didn't ask
That's
the
all
public
right.
input, we just the select board already had their first reading last week, so if we're not moving forward on this, certainly you can also come to their meeting next week too.
Right, I just thought I'd ask a question because
Please do.
under the blighted structure, I come to section F. A structure that is regularly used for illegal drug activity, structure will be deemed to be regularly used for illegal drug activity. You can read section F.
Yep.
It just seems to me that we're going from a blighted building interest to something totally different.
It also covers nuisances, unsound nuisances as well. That's another part. That's part of the broader covering of this nuisance, of this ordinance, is to cover problems that are with the building and problems with sometimes the activity in the building that prevent things like weeds and garbage and, you see what I'm saying? Activities by people who occupy the property.
This seems to go a little deeper to me than that.
Yeah.
Well,
And that's
it's
concerning
more than
me.
just blight. Okay, it's nuisance as well.
And we have
And I
that
think what you're
view
talking
by,
about would be clearly under the nuisance aspect, not the blight.
yeah.
What I would suggest, Mike, I think in the future here, coming up, we have the U.S. Attorney from the state of Vermont coming in. You may want to show up at that discussion and hear what he has to say, or she, whoever the moment. I know years back I had spoken with the gentleman that was in charge there, and there was a mechanism that allowed the community to deal with certain issues in a different form than they've been normally dealt with. So I think it'd be beneficial. I believe that's on the agenda here at some point in the near future, isn't it? Somewhere I saw the U.S. Attorney coming in.
November 20th at noon, it'll be in this room, and Craig's report from the U.S. Attorney's office is going
Not the building, too.
Yep, thanks for highlighting that.
Thank you, Mike.
Can I just add something quick? I also really encourage the village and the town to look at this from a public health perspective. This is an enforcement mechanism, and when people are struggling with addiction, we need to be able to approach that from a comprehensive approach where we're bringing services to people who really need them. And I don't think that this ordinance is addressing that impact. So I really, as a resident of the village and the town, I really hope that we're exploring options where we can work with service providers and first responders to make sure that folks who are impacted by addiction are getting those services and not just giving them penalties.
And you've been planning it, so you know how you struggle with this item.
Yeah, and I appreciate the getting feedback and working with us to create language that can make sure that there aren't barriers to folks to get services.
So I would highly recommend that if you wish to come to next week to the select board meeting, you can express other opinions. If we are not moving forward on this, we will, probably be there too,
Yes.
watching them.
Yes.
And want to make sure they had due diligence. So second reading is appropriate because it's another 60 days if they approve it next week. Thank you.
Thank you
very much. Anything further? Are we good with this? Okay, now we'll move on to the police and fire. Yes, now you have something. Okay.
Well, no.
What?
Just, it'd be nice, I know that's at noon, there's a lot of people that work or they're out of the community that may not have the opportunity to be here. So I think also an evening appointment, whether it be a select board meeting or a trustee meeting or just in general, would be better served for the residents.
We were bringing this in for the landlord group.
Yeah.
As well.
And the lunches have been working because they seem to be local, so we do it for the
Right. I do want to express that, because I'm on the ordinance committee for the village, and we've been working on those for over a year now, little by little. But that ordinances aren't just intended to make sure they are constantly enforced, but they are also a deterrent. The language itself allows for some people of average, at least average or better intelligence, to understand that when they read that, they shouldn't do certain things. Some of them make perfect logical sense, you shouldn't do them anyway. But sometimes ordinances are there simply to deter people from their actions. We know that other communities, every community in every state is struggling with the item, the drug issue item. And it's problematic, and finding ways that address a deterrence and also give us an ability to do something. And I'm not comfortable with this yet either, but then again, it's the town that's going to be enforcing it, so it'll behoove us to see what we could suggest before they adopt it. So, thank you. All right, now we move on to the call logs. You did have a couple questions, which we would probably ask Chief McGinnis on the fire log.
Since we're picking on you tonight. I noticed there were like within a matter of 8 or 10 hours, there were 3 smoke detector soundings at one residence.
That was actually the United Church. They had a problem with the alarm panel. It was addressed. It happened, I think, at 5 o'clock at night. Went on through the night, early to the following morning, before they were able to get somebody in there. But it's
So it kept going off.
Yep.
Now, on an automatic fire alarm, I noticed we had 3 of those. One was in the village.
No, it's downstairs.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Is
it's
that where?
in the village.
Yeah.
One was in Rockingham and one was in Saxon's River. Curious as to what our role is in Saxon's River and Rockingham.
In Rockingham, we are automatic to the industrial park. That's when that way.
So Sonax would be a place to respond.
Yes,
Okay.
Sonax, Chroma, those buildings, and Saxon's River is for mine county,
Why would we respond?
for a ladder truck. That's just part of the mutual aid agreement for that, for those buildings out there.
Because Saxon River Fire doesn't have a ladder truck? Oh, okay. I guess that'd be one. Any other questions on fire, or any questions on police?
That, just in general, coming up with just cooling off in here, or the heat going down, are we on computer control thing, or what?
He's saving money.
Probably probably goes down as the evening progresses,
Yeah,
which is what
we
you
do
would
it
do.
at night.
Okay, it's supposed to be one of the coldest nights of the year so far.
Put your whale sweatshirt on and do a little advertising.
It won't go down too far.
Isn't that your sweatshirt?
Yeah, that's a sweatshirt.
I gotta warm it up over there.
Yeah, well, yeah, I came in the building, I go, is it gonna be too hot, or is it gonna be too cold? It's always that, and it's downstairs on the lower theater, same problem too. Usually it's just too cold.
Well, see, if we were in the basement, all the hot air would be rising.
Okay.
All right.
Agenda item for the next regular trustees meeting, which is December 10th. I want to make sure we add, I want to make sure that we add streets and sidewalks. We had a conversation that the streets and sidewalks have not been changed, that ordinance has not been amended, because I'm being told by Shannon that Ray recommends that we have a first and second reading of it before we adopt it. Although I have the understanding that, oh wait, not streets and sidewalks, I'm sorry, parking regulations, my mistake. Parking regulations.
I'm looking at streets and sidewalks.
No, it's because we were working on it today. No, I was working on the ordinance committee, but no, parking regs. That we should treat it like any other ordinance, even though we were told initially we could just adopt it as soon as we
Statutes.
got it.
Clear.
Oh, so parking regs, and the automated vehicle,
Okay.
just discuss, what, offering our community as an automated vehicle testing site. That would be it. Automated vehicle testing site. There, here.
I don't know, is that really safe? We've got a lot of pedestrians.
No, pass one of these down to Ray, would you?
Well,
It came up on Municipal Day. They're looking for communities that don't have anybody yet who's offered to be a testing site. Whenever they get around to that, I think it's
They could be
2021. Huh?
Thank you, excited.
You could, yeah, yell, scream, and
Well, I just watched
get
them.
hit by an automated
Do you
car.
know how many calls are gonna get called in when they see a car drive by?
By
With children driving.
I mean, at least they should have, they should, in an automated test, shouldn't there actually be a person in there?
Oh, sure.
Who doesn't actually touch the, controls?
Right.
So they're there in case of a default, right? So they had to swerve aside from hitting a pedestrian.
There's no point in running these around empty.
No, that's true. Let's see, did I have anything else? I think that, those are the, wait, and then, okay, I'm good.
I'd like to finalize the manager's goals.
Okay, and Wendy you'll be here December 10th, Wendy?
Wendy.
I'm sure she will.
Hello? Okay, yeah,
Yeah, she'll shake it up.
She must be in a tunnel.
yeah. Okay, so,
Finalize the manager's goals with the trustees. And the
Yeah.
other one is, I'd like a report on this landlord committee, or whatever it's called. Specifically
yeah.
related to, Shannon reported earlier that the item on the agenda was basically how to discourage landlords
Well,
from having.
that won't be the only item. They have a lease that has been looked at and reviewed by
Oh,
attorneys.
sample lease?
And distributing them to landlords to safeguard them so that they have rights. And then we do have Craig report coming to talk about how to reduce the drug.
3-0.
Hi, Wendy.
Because
That's okay, we're almost over, but, okay.
Windsor,
Windsor Housing Trust.
is coming as well. So there's multiple items on the agenda, but it's just informational meetings for landlords or property owners.
So,
Because I
Craig
think
is,
that.
wait, Craig is with whom? We just want to clear it up. Craig Laporte?
Craig Laporte,
Laporte is with whom?
the U.S. State's Attorney.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, what I want to know is, when we brought this up over a year ago, my premise wasn't educating landlords. It was basically, my premise was that we've got a certain group of taxpayers that, because of a quirk in the state law, get favorable tax treatment. They're not considered homesteads, and the homestead tax rate is higher than the non-homestead tax rate. And so they get tax benefits there. And the issue of consuming municipal services, like our police and fire department.
But by
So,
educating the landlords and reducing the activity in the rental units and putting the onus more on the landlords and giving them rights, a lot of the.
see, now, what I'm looking at is what the manager's goals are
Okay.
with regards to this group, and what we've accomplished. In other words, has there been a noticeable reduction in the number of police calls? I don't know.
Well,
but
we just started these.
Had one other meeting.
Yeah, this is our second meeting. I mean, this is gonna be something that takes time. These leases that we're giving to the landlords have to be, distributed to their rentals so that the landlords have more rights. Right now, a lot of the landlords don't have
Right,
leases.
but what I'm
so
saying
they
is
don't have the ability to.
we want to get a better understanding, right now as to what the manager's goals are and how she's gonna measure the accomplishments against those goals.
Oh, from this group?
From whatever's
Rental property
going on,
owners,
from
okay.
whatever's going on. And again, I'd like to kind of revisit at least my initial premise, which was the cost of municipal services and who's bearing them. So, and whether that fits into the current, plan for this committee,
Okay.
okay? Those are my,
Looking for a report, okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything else they'd like on the,
There'll be financials.
yes, of course. The usual.
The usual.
Anything additional? Okay, all right. Hearing nothing else, move on to reviewing the agenda items for, well, by next month, will you have more detailed information about the heating system and all that?
That's my goal, yes.
Right, so
Oh,
we
then
can
we
possibly
should
make
put that
a
in.
bid proposal, yes, so that should be on there for sure. Okay, reviewing agenda items for the next joint board meeting, which is sometime, it doesn't say when, in January of 2020. I think we can, I think we have time on that.
Yeah.
Approve orders, bills, and warrants.
Motion to approve the orders, bills, and warrants.
Seconded.
Okay. Any discussion on them? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're good with that. And other business? Jonathan?
Good.
Jakes?
I'm good.
Good. Steph?
Good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, anything further? Wendy, do you have anything further for other business?
No.
Thank you. All right, it looks like we have need for an executive session. I need a motion to go forward on that.
I move that the board enter exec.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, can you please invite me and Shannon and I believe whichever attorneys are there?
And, yeah, Ray is here. Okay, do you hear that? Okay.
Are we ready?
Yes, now we're ready.
I move that the board enter into executive session to discuss the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, but the public body must make a final decision to hire or appoint in an open meeting, and it must explain the reasons for its final decision pursuant to 1 VSA 31383.
And to include?
And to include the Shannon Barbella, the Human Resources Director, Wendy Harris, the Town Manager, and Village Attorney Raymond Sudan.
I'll second that.
Okay, one discussion is we had a topic earlier that involved our attorney. That can be a separate executive session.
Is that gonna have to be a separate,
It's gonna have to be.
It's gonna have to be about the unsafe building, it'll have to be a separate, so I have to come out and go back in.
Okay, that's
Okay.
not that clear.
All right, so
Are
we
we
have,
going to be taking action on this one, or?
Well, we
This
don't
one?
know.
Maybe
We'll
not.
take an action. We'll come out if we-
all right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we are now going into executive session.